the Team Performance Podcast with Spencer Horn and Christian Napier. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode, a very special episode of the Team Performance Winning Ways for Uncertain Times podcast. I'm Christian Napier, and delighted as always to be joined by the man in royal purple, the one and only, irreplaceable Spencer Horn. Spencer, how are you?
I am wonderful. Christian, how are you?
You know what? I'm doing pretty darn good, all things considered.
Yeah, well, you know why I'm excited is that you and I get to go to the Red Iguana on Friday.
Oh, man, I'm stoked. I haven't been to Red Iguana since the last time we were at Red Iguana, which was, I think, in July or something last year. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Long time.
So today is a kind of special time for us with this podcast, isn't it?
It is a special time. You reminded me of it because I am horrible with anniversaries, and it happens to be about 1 year to the day, not quite, but 1 year to the day since we started this podcast back in March of 2020, right after everything shut down for the pandemic.
Yeah. I remember we actually started like 2 weeks before and then when the pandemic hit and everything shut down right here in the middle of March, we had to change our just a little bit of our focus. And it was good that we did. We wanted to provide solutions and resources for businesses to really manage and handle these challenging times. But this is going to be, I know we have another episode. I think this is going to be like 49. We have 47 published, don't we? Or do we have 46?
Yeah, man, we've got a lot. It's funny. I'm just looking here on my computer now at this catalog of episodes, and it's been really awesome. We've had some amazing guests in the last year.
Yeah.
We've talked about some really interesting topics. And we've received a lot of great feedback from our listeners too about how the podcast has helped them in one way, shape, or form. And
that's because you're so easy to listen to, Christian. That's why the people are listening.
Actually, I do better if I'm listening and not talking. We'll leave it at that.
One of the things that we talked about when we started, if you recall, I remember very emphatically saying this will end and we need to get through this. And well, now it's a year later and we're still in the thick of it. The good news is that, unemployment has really come down. I believe it's around 6.5% in the United States. I think we last year got up to close to 15% in April. And it's steadily been, falling. That unemployment's been falling. That's good news. The economy is here in the United States and in most places around the world recovering. But I've been talking with people all over the world, Christian, and I just talked to people in Lebanon today, yesterday in Austria. A couple days before, I was talking to someone in Ireland. They're on full lockdown in Ireland. Austria's in lockdown. No ability to get together in Lebanon, and so these are places around the world that I just barely have talked to. So many of us are still in the thick of it, yet we've learned how to shift and adapt and work. What I notice and what I'm talking to my clients about, or what they're talking to me about and asking help for, is there's this phenomenon that happened early on where so much uncertainty was happening. So many people lost their job. People were afraid of losing their jobs, or the economy completely crashing. So people were willing to just roll up their sleeves and do whatever it took. And you recall in our podcast, we've talked about something called Parkinson's Law, right? Initially, everyone was euphoric over the fact that, hey, I get to work from home. I don't have to commute. That's going to save me time. I'm going to have more time for my family. And basically what's happened is, according to Parkinson's Law, work expands to fill the time available. So most of us ended up working more time. Plus, we had to figure stuff out. We needed more communication. We're now dealing with kids at home. People have so much more stress, so much more anxiety than they've ever had before. And I'm going to share some statistics about that today. And they have worked harder than ever before. And so now what my clients are telling me is that they're just done. They're burned out. They put their shoulder to the wheel and rolled up their sleeves, all the metaphors, right, that we talk about, grind it out. We have a season that has been the never ending season, has just been going on, and people are tired. And so in the last couple of days, as a matter of fact, the last 2 days, I've given a same presentation to two groups, and then the week before that again on this subject. And I thought maybe it would be helpful to share some of the principles that I've been talking to these businesses about today, if that's all right with you.
No, I veto that. Of course it's all right with me, Spencer. It's absolutely all right. I mean, it's urgent. It's happening right now. I do think it needs to be addressed. I personally am feeling it. Like you, I feel like I am working so hard. I have been up working since 4 o'clock this morning, and I'm tired. And so I understand what the listeners and your clients are going through,
Yeah.
having these difficult times. It's been a long year. It's been a stressful year. So I think
Yeah.
this topic is super timely, and I really appreciate you raising it now.
Well, I'm going to share with you the topic that I've been talking about. Let me fix that here. Basically, it's called "Put on your mask and cape, own the new normal." It's part of just recognizing that this new normal requires some skills that will help you to be successful. And I talk about putting on your mask because that's the thing we all hate to do, but this is a little kitschy for sure, but putting on your cape is, tapping into your superhero powers to continue to fight on is the metaphor.
Although
So
Edna Mode from Incredibles will say, no capes.
that's right, because you get sucked into an airplane engine or something, right?
Exactly.
But one of the things that I start off with when I talk to these different groups is I have them take a poll, and I usually have it baked in. And this is one that I just did yesterday, and I'm not going to reveal a company or anything like that. But I ask, first of all, how are you feeling about your job and life? And here's the first comment: fragile, pretty good for a Tuesday. Actually, this was in a company in an organization in Europe. Can't wait for the pandemic to end. Work-wise, it's okay. Fatigue is kicking in a bit. You see, these are comments from other people. Some people are feeling great, busy, confident, all kinds of different, answers. Lacking sport, but will be skiing tomorrow. Busy but healthy. So these are people in Austria. Awaiting relaxation when it becomes warm. I am missing meeting with colleagues and friends already quite a lot. Bored. So these are just all kinds of, this person is feeling arranged. Unsure how things will evolve. A balancing act, but keeping it together. Then I ask, how would you rate your mental health? And for this group, 15% were never better, and 69%, these people don't work together. They're part of an association, and 69% are okay, 15% are managing. But I did one just the day before, and it was interesting that 15% admitted needing help. It's anonymous, so for them to do that within a company meeting is telling. And then 15% said I'm managing, and then more with okay. So basically 60% were okay to I need help and I'm managing, and then 40% were never better.
That's interesting, Spencer. When people are taking these kinds of polls, knowing in, even though that they know it's anonymous, but knowing that they're going in and these kind of things might be brought up in a meeting, they may tend to be a little bit more optimistic.
That's right. And so, and we were very careful to say, hey, listen, this is all confidential. No one will get it. But still, some people might be a little nervous to do that. Well, here's this organization in Austria. And the question I asked next is, how would you rate mental health as a priority in your organization? 5% said it's not a priority. 24% said low priority. 19% saying getting better, and then 52% said it's a high priority. What's interesting is this is a year now of data that says we've got to take mental health more seriously. And we've had more conversations about it than ever before. And yet still so many organizations are struggling with having conversations about mental health. So one of the things that I want to share with you, we've had guests on here, like we had Jackie Edmiston, for example. She's this incredible executive, and she's living in Switzerland, right? And she works for the International Olympic Committee, and she talks about just crashing and having what did she talk about? Just fatigue and just dealing with it, and how that's really impacted her life. Well, she's not alone. A lot of people are having those kinds of challenges, and this grief cycle was really developed by a Swiss psychiatrist in 1969, and it was designed to help deal with grief resulting from the loss of a loved one. Right? It was really designed to do that. But let me go back just before I get into this and talk about these results that I just shared with you on mental health. In May of last year, Harvard Business Review published that nearly 70% of all employees felt like the pandemic has been the most stressful time in their careers. And over 40% are seeing a decline in their mental health as a result of it. And, everyone was hopeful that the vaccine would help. I mean, we're still doing that. And, I shared that I got my vaccine first shot last Friday. And I have people around the world. I had one lady from Kenya tell me, how lucky I am because they have to pay for it there. And, there's favoritism and, it's just expensive. They're not getting it out to everybody. Other countries that I talk to, people are like, even in Austria, as advanced as this European nation is, the Chancellor Kurz, I forget his first name. Is it Martin Kurz? I can't remember. He's the Chancellor. He's having to fight against other EU nations to make sure that they're getting their fair share of vaccines. I mean, there's so many challenges and stresses. Are people like, am I going to even get the vaccine? When am I going to be able to go out? So this all relates to grief, and I'm going to explain why. The pandemic is ending, but the results, the impacts, the effects of this pandemic will live on for years to come. Because grief doesn't just impact us from the loss of a loved one, though many of you listening today may have lost a loved one due to the pandemic or other reasons. I mean, we lose people every day. And how do you deal with that? And she shares this cycle, but grief comes from also, think about what we've lost this last year, Christian. We've lost birthdays, we've lost anniversaries, we've lost structure, we've lost connections based on some of those things that you heard, wanting to meet with people. We've lost getting out to ski on the mountains. We've lost seasons. I mean, our Utah Utes only had 5 games. We're lucky we had 5 games, but they didn't go to the postseason. They didn't continue on. So much of the NBA and seasons were cut short last year. We've lost so much. We can't go back in. If you're in Las Vegas, they just started letting a few fans now back in the arenas finally. But in many places around the world, that you can't go participate in any spectator sports, right? So think about what we've lost, just our way of life. There's a grief that's wrapped up in losing some things that are so close and important to us, this normalcy that we're missing.
Yeah, it's not just the grief. It's the level of effort that's required, just the amount of physical and mental and emotional energy that it takes to shift everything. And in some ways, maybe that also happens, I guess, in grief, right? When you lose a loved one, you often are just kind of having to shift everything around, And so many of us have had to shift the way we do work, what we do in the mornings, in the afternoons, in the evenings, on the weekends. Uh, a lot of people have suffered economic hardships. You're right, 100%. It's been really, really hard, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, and it's going to take years for us to get back to normal. And so, so what I want to share with you is that, sometimes people who have needed help the most during these times have not been able to get it. Divorce rates are up. I mean, I talked about this when we had Hadil from the, oh my gosh, what's the name of the shelter in Los Angeles that we had come in here, Mary's house, or
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but yes, and she was
right.
great.
And she didn't have all the data at that time. We now have data that domestic violence is up 8%. Divorce rates worldwide are up because of all the stresses that people are experiencing right now. And it's going to take years to get back to normal. And people who are needing help the most, people who have drug addictions or alcohol addictions or all kinds, needing to see psychiatrists or their mental health experts, are not getting it. And the challenges haven't peaked yet. So when we experience grief, initially what happens is we have this denial, and there's sometimes avoidance. Remember, we say, oh, it's not going to hit us as bad as it hit China or whatever. Or sometimes there's elation, right? Oh, I'm so excited, we're going to work from home, I don't like going into the office. Or then there's shock and fear, but there was a lot of denial. I mean, you can go look back and just feel what that was like, right? Then what happens is we get to the next phase, is anger. It's where we have frustration and irritation, and we might ask questions like, why is this happening to me? And you may blame others, like your boss, the government, or other nations' government. I mean, how much were we blaming China for everything, right? And then it was Europe because they didn't lock down early, and they were coming to New York, and that's where the big outbreak happened. You remember all just blaming everybody else?
Well, yeah, and then looking here in the States, of course, at our own government, just who had been talking and talking about pandemic relief, and people
Right.
were waiting for it, and it's like, well, come on, guys, just figure it out. Quit playing the politics and just figure it out. Figure out how to help the small business owner. Figure out how to help the person who's lost a job. Figure these things out. Quit playing games. You're right. A lot of us felt a lot of that frustration when things weren't getting sorted out as quickly as we hoped they would.
Right. And so part of the challenge is you ask questions like, why me? Why can't they get it together? Or maybe if you're somebody of faith, you may ask, where is God? How come he's allowing this to happen? How can this happen to me? And we can say that life is not fair. So in the first phase of denial, we is this really happening? We rationalize it's going to be over soon. But in this phase, the anger is based on the kinds of questions. So I want to talk to you about that and what that causes. Then we get to the third phase, which is bargaining. And this is where we struggle to find meaning, right? We reach out to others, and we tell stories, and we make what if statements like, what if I was more flexible? What if I just worked harder, which most of us did? What if I took that shift that I don't want to take? Maybe I work with that boss that I don't want to, or I put off looking for another job right now just because I'm so worried. And so we do this bargaining, saying, if I just am a good boy or girl, things will go back to the way it was. And
Yeah,
that leads us.
interesting thing about that is that going back to the previous comment, we had to learn how to do that in different ways, because
Yeah.
You could in the past go over to your mom's house or go visit a brother or a good friend and sit down and have a conversation or have a dinner, and then all of a sudden you can't do that anymore.
No.
So how do you start doing this bargaining? You're like, well, I don't know, with this Zoom thing, I don't know, can we do these kind of things? I don't. It's made it really tough on people, because it's actually impacted how they would normally process this grief. We
Exactly.
can't do it the way that we used to do it because of these limitations that we have.
And that's right. And so people aren't getting the help or the support that they normally would. And so that leads then to the next phase, which is depression, feeling overwhelmed, helplessness, hostility, flight. And this is the dangerous phase, because it's like we have no control and there's nothing we can do. And sometimes we ask during this time, what is the point of going on? There's no meaning. A lot of people are struggling to find meaning. And if you say that there's no meaning, or what's the point? I mean, in some countries, suicide is way up. And I know this is a little depressing, but it's important that we talk about it. And it can be dangerous. And how we behave under pressure, we've talked about so long, is related to our behavioral traits. And so this pressure is causing people to have kind of their worst side of them come out more quickly. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I have.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I've noticed it in myself.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
generally a pretty optimistic person. It was really hard at times during the last year to be optimistic. When I saw the industry that I worked in for the last 20 years completely crumble, thinking, what in the world am I going to do?
Yeah.
It it was hard. It was hard not to be overwhelmed. It was hard to keep a sense of hope when everything around you just seems to be going in the toilet.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm taking my picture off because I keep getting out of sync. That's the other problem, right? We got technology delays. It's just frustrating. But that leads then to the final phase of acceptance, and that's where we explore options, new plans to deal with the challenges, where we move on. And this is not about giving in. It's not about thinking everything is going to be okay, but rather, I'm going to be okay. You're going to be okay. This is where the work begins. But we must address grief and mental wellness in the workplace. And there's a cost if we're not willing to do that. And here is some data that I just recently found of the cost of unaddressed grief. Number one, 200 million lost workdays every year to grief. 16.8 billion in employee productivity losses. How often have we talked about increasing productivity on this show?
Oh, so often. Just to clarify, Spencer, these are just like regular annual numbers. This isn't pandemic.
That's right. So this is research by McKinsey and Company, that shows that individuals' well-being affects productivity, company turnover rates, and health costs. And that's where some of the McKinsey is highly respected for their accurate and really important information. And then what they find is that 60% of symptoms of 60% reported symptoms of mental health conditions, and of those, 61% said that has impacted their productivity. So some people deal with mental health and just keep grinding on, but other people have seen it really make a difference. And so McKinsey and Company said that what's more concerning is that 1/3 of people struggling with mental health issues, less than 1/3, receive the help that they need for those mental health issues.
Wow, that's mind-boggling. And these are just regular numbers. The pandemic has just blown all those out of the water, I think.
Yeah. And so you're right. And productivity losses due to mental health really, they're astronomical. So we've got basically people calling in for sick days, short-term disability, presenteeism, where employees are physically at work, but they're not at full capacity. I mean, just think about it. If you're preoccupied about homeschooling or everything that's going on, you're just not your best. You're just not giving everything that you can for the business.
No, it's totally true. And particularly in these remote settings where, you're sitting here and you're thinking, I just need a break. It's so easy to get up and just, and you need to do this, right? You need to take breaks and so on and so forth. But it is easy to get lost in all of life's other challenges. Uh, and it's more difficult for employers to necessarily hold their people accountable because their work is not as visible because they're not seeing them in the office every day. they're not interact with them
That's
in
right.
the same ways. So yeah, I can see totally the challenge there.
So what do we do about it? And a couple of suggestions I want to just share, and we can talk a little bit about 6 suggestions. Number one, look for humor. We got to have fun. We got to let off some steam. We'll talk about that. Change the questions. Instead of why me, why is this happening, who's to blame, we need to change the questions. We've actually talked about that. If you remember, we had Dan Lear talking about the power of questions. This is something I believe in, and we need to point that out again. Number 3, increase gratitude. That's so important and so powerful. There's a concept called learned optimism, and I want to talk to you about the difference of being optimistic versus pessimistic, and some science and data behind that. And then this concept, act as if, is helpful. But these are things that you can do yourself, and some of them may not go far enough, and that's where corporate wellness and mental health support can come in, and companies really need to take a look at it. And listen, I'm not a healthcare practitioner to do this, so I'm not advocating me or anybody else, but if you have these programs available with your insurance, just make sure people are aware of it and availing themselves of it, because corporate wellness is there is an absolute impact to the bottom line when people aren't at their best and they're handling all this stress right now. So let's start off with number 1.
Let's do it.
So I like to find, these are some tweets. When this first thing started happening, we all went to Zoom meetings, right? This person says, my commute is no longer, to the office. It's from my bed to the living room, but I'm still late to work every day. I'm starting to think I'm the problem. And, think about it. Those people say, well, if I just didn't have to fight all the traffic. And once that's gone, it still doesn't matter. We get to, I think that's funny, but we do get to own our behaviors. Here's another one. We just did this really hard online escape room. A coworker says, you mean our company Zoom meeting? Here's one that shows a picture of what you look like when you have audio only, and then one when you're in your Zoom meeting. Of course, you and I, we don't take the time to do our hair, Christian, do we?
I don't have a lot of hair to do, so
yeah, me neither.
That's a blessing when it comes to Zoom meetings. I don't have to worry too much about hair. I will say, though, it's interesting. I noticed this trend where when we started doing the Zoom meetings, a lot of people were using the virtual backdrops.
Yeah.
And then while here in the States, I've seen that decline over time. It's like, okay, enough of the virtual. Let's, we all know we're working from home, so we don't need to pretend like we're somewhere we're not. And so I've seen people just kind of use their normal living spaces and not using the virtual backdrops as much. That being said, the calls that I've had with my friends in Europe are almost all still using the virtual backdrops. I don't know.
They are. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of them are, I know some people, even in Canada, they just, I don't know. I think that there's a privacy issue. There's a strong privacy, think of all the laws they have with email and everything like that. They just, I like being able to kind of having a window into each other's lives. But I think that some people are very protective of that, and that may be why.
Yeah, could be.
So, here's some of the benefits of working from home, right? We get to sit in our underwear. I know that's what you're wearing right now.
No, I actually have sweats on, which my wife affectionately calls baby pants.
Yeah,
it's become my uniform in the last 12 months. I wear the baby pants.
Oh, that's great.
How about you, Spencer? You've got a very dapper shirt on. You have some really nice slacks to go with that, or are you?
No, I wear jeans. I wear jeans every day. But here's a guy in a suit and tie, and we get to enjoy that and have a little bit of fun with that. So I'm wearing my house slippers. Here's me giving a presentation with my shorts and my nice shirt and a sport coat on.
Nice.
Now I've updated my office, or my cockpit, if you will, a little bit since then, and doesn't quite look like that anymore. But we get to have we get to have some fun and point out things that are fun. All right, so let's talk about number 2, and that is the powerful questions. This is something that's really helpful in dealing with anger. Start asking better questions. Instead of asking why me, ask, what can I do now? Who can help me? Who do I know who can introduce me to people that are hiring? How can I improve my skills right now? What can I do to improve my resume to be more attractive to a future employer? Of course, people who are employing people don't want to hear that, but what could I do to make my company better? I was talking to a Planet Fitness franchise in Houston, and they just hired me yesterday based on a speech I gave to a CEO group last week. Remember, I was in Houston. So this CEO just hired me to help them work on how they hire and creating job models and how to be more attractive. I mean, they have great employees, but they want to be better at finding the best. And so what can we do as a company to make ourselves more attractive to future candidates, right? Those are empowering questions. And what's amazing is we get what we focus on. Our brains are so powerful. If you say, why me? The brain will go figure out why you deserve all the crap that's happened to you. Or you're going to find out reasons why you are not worthy to be successful. It sounds perverse, doesn't it? But that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, unlike the U2 song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. You're right. More often than not, we do find exactly what we were looking for. And if we're not careful, if we're looking for the wrong things, we will put ourselves in a rut even further.
Correct. So I want to show you how powerful the mind is. I'd like you to just, if you're listening, I want you to close your eyes right now. And I'd like for you to, no matter what, do not picture a red bicycle. Just don't picture a red bicycle in your mind. Just leave it completely blank. How'd you do, Christian?
Well, you immediately went to red bicycle. I mean, this is the whole concept of the movie Inception, right? It's hard to subconsciously implant thoughts because the moment you make this kind of a statement, we all just start thinking about red bicycles, even though
That's right.
it's not to.
And so why that's important is because if I'm telling myself, why is this happening to me? The brain will just keep working until it finds a reason, whether it's accurate or not, a plausible reason why this is happening to you. And so you end up recreating or continuing those challenges. Instead, if you say, okay, what can I learn from this experience? How can I change my approach? That's where you want to get your brain power, generating ideas in a productive way.
Oh, I totally agree. I'm curious though, you said, this particular strategy was quite good for dealing with anger. And so as you go through these points, I think it's helpful to understand how they kind of align with those 5 stages of grief, and
Well,
where they can really help.
This third one is also really helpful for anger. I think the humor is good for depression. I just think it's good for releasing stress and anxiety. You need to have some fun. I think that's why so many of us binged on movies. But be careful. I mean, what did I watch? Oh, we just watched Greenland. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a disaster movie.
Yeah, we just rented it on the weekend.
Did you watch it?
We did. We watched it.
It made me so frustrated. They're like, oh my gosh, you're so stupid with how you're using your phone right now. Anyway, I just kept thinking of it. It made me anxious. Did it do that to you?
Well, my wife is kind of like that. She's like, yeah, these people are, I don't know where this is going, and why are they doing what they're doing? At the end, you're kind of like, okay, the more sci-fi elements of it kind of come into play, and that makes it a bit more interesting. But yes, it's really hard being entertained and enjoying that entertainment if you're
It's
constantly
too close to home.
like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Yeah,
Right.
too close to home.
Yeah. So, we need some more humor. Maybe watch Tommy Boy or something, learn some sales skills and have fun while you're doing it. So the third thing I want to share with you is about increasing gratitude. And this is a powerful, powerful strategy to fight anger. And this is about finding meaning, right? And this also gets to the place where, where we're feeling, a loss of meaning. And in that grief cycle, that can be that bargaining and depression area that's very dangerous. So this deals with everything. And you remember we had Nicole Kalkowski come on our show, and she's just amazing. For those of you who have not heard that, go back. I don't know if it's like episode 9 or something like that.
It's number 18.
Number 18. Okay. Go back and listen to episode 18 with Nicole Kalkowski. And she tells the story of her son, Ryan, who has severe autism as well as a life-threatening disease. And the point I want to just highlight from her story was, there were times when, many times when their family is getting ready to do something, like go out on a little activity or a vacation, and Ryan will go into a terrible seizure. I mean, he doesn't talk, he can't feed himself, he's completely dependent on them, but he'll go into a seizure and they have to take him to the hospital. And, Nicole has not had didn't have a great childhood and all kinds of different abuse, ran away from home at 15, but married a great man, and she's so blessed. And but there are times with this situation where she would find herself laying on the hospital floor, just crying uncontrollably, and then she stops and she reminds herself how blessed she is, how wonderful it is to have this child in her life, the 3 beautiful daughters and this beautiful son, how grateful she is for the experiences that they have, because it's brought their family so close together, the love they have for each other, the compassion, the empathy that they've learned. She says, you got to acknowledge that life is hard. You just have to. It's not that we just say everything is rainbows and unicorns, right? But she says you have a choice to marinate in the hard stuff or shift your perspective and choose to find the good in the situation. She says many people react to these situations in life and are angry. And you can choose to marinate in your anger. You can focus on gratitude, lean into your hardships, and ask, what is this teaching me? What did we need to learn this last year? What did you need to learn? And she said, if you recall, you really only figure yourself out in the hardships. You don't learn much about yourself when you're just coasting along and everything is fluffy, right? But when you hit the base of the mountain, you have a couple choices. You can sit down and just give up, or you can climb. And I love that metaphor of climbing, because it is hard. It's hard to climb mountains. I have a goal to climb 6 peaks this year, and I'm old, and I'm like, it's going to be hard. But are you going to sit down when these hardships come, or are you going to stand up and climb?
It's really interesting, Spencer, when you talk about this, and it was great to see the picture of Nicole and her family once again. It was one of my favorite conversations that we've had with guests. She is so real.
Yeah.
And these things that we're talking about in many ways are counter to our nature, right? What your nature says when you're in a difficult spot is not to be grateful. What your nature says, what you normally would do is ask the questions, why me?
Right.
Basically what you're doing is saying, what you would normally do when you're going through this process, do the opposite of that to get out of it, or to resolve it. So this idea of increasing gratitude, it runs counter to what you normally feel, because when you're going through a really difficult time, the last thing you might be feeling is feeling grateful. And so having to try to flip that is not always an easy thing to do, right? I mean, to find gratitude when you're in the throes of a grieving situation, not an easy thing to do.
Correct. Why don't well, this is one of the things I end with this topic. Why don't you read? Because this relates to what you're talking about.
Oh, now you're going to test my literacy. Let me
Yeah.
see if I can do this. The problems we face today cannot be solved by the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. And that was by Albert Einstein.
So how does that relate to what you're saying, do you think?
Well, exactly. You you've got to be able to find the strength, and you may need help to do that, to find the strength to actually look at things a little differently.
Yeah, and he says there's a correlation between the problems that we're experiencing in our thinking. And so in many respects, we created the problem, right? I mean, you can't just say, well, it's China's fault, but so what? I mean, we're creating our own problems. What do we got to do to change that? And we've got to change the level of thinking. What we're focused on is exactly what you were saying, is we got to kind of, in many cases, go against our nature and think differently about the problem so that we can change the outcomes of the problems that we've created in our life.
So just out of the 6 points, gratitude was what number? Was that 4?
Gratitude was number 3.
3. Oh, so we've got a ways to go here, Spencer.
So all right, I'll go fast. So learned optimism is number 4, and this is, to me, this is so fascinating because there's two sets of psychiatrists. Well, one's a group of psychologists and one is a psychiatrist that talk about this. So I'm bringing in some big guns here, but back in when Martin Seligman and Steve Meyer were in their first year of their their psychology doctorate, they did this famous experiment that helped them identify this concept of learned optimism. And what they did is they took, if you maybe recall, they took these 2 groups of dogs and they put them in cages to shock them. And they had a bell that would go off, kind of a Pavlovian signal. And then a shock would happen for 7 seconds. And in the first cage, there was a little button that the dogs could touch with their nose and stop the shocks. In the second cage, there was no such button, and the dogs just had to endure the 7 seconds of shock. So what they found is in the first group, the dogs learned how to control their destiny and turn off the shocks whenever they heard the bell. And they did that. They became proactive. What they found in the second cage is that the dogs start to just give up. They lay down on the hospital floor, so to speak, and just whimper and let the beatings continue until they end, because they can't do anything other than just accept the challenges. And this became known as learned helplessness. And what these 2 found is that both animals and humans act very much the same way when we experience things that we can't control. It's called learned helplessness. And at first, a lot of their peers said they're crazy, dogs can't learn helplessness or optimism. And they studied this for again and again, and they found that it is true. Animals and humans both learn helplessness. But here's where the experiments get interesting. They took the dogs and put them all in the same pen that didn't have a cage top to it, but had a wall around it about 4 feet high, I believe. And while they were all in there, they sounded the alarm like the shock was going to happen. Now, most of the dogs who had learned to take control or had the ability to take control, as you might expect, jumped up and got themselves out of there. But what was really interesting was 1/3 of the dogs that had no reason to be optimistic got up and jumped out. That's what they wanted to focus on. It's called learned optimism. So they studied that. And here's what I want to ask you, Christian. I want you to imagine a scenario, and I'm going to put you on the spot. And those of you who are listening, I want to put you on the spot as well. I want you to think of a scenario, and here's the scenario. Imagine that you can't get all the work done that others expect of you. Now imagine one major cause for this event. What comes to mind?
Uh, I actually had two thoughts came to my mind pretty much at the same time.
Oh,
And the very first one, and I'm being completely transparent here, the very
good.
first one was the very first thought that came to my mind was someone dropped a big deliverable on me at the last minute. It wasn't planned, and all of a sudden I have this unforeseen deadline that I have to meet, and that's caused me to feel the sense of being overwhelmed. I have too much to do. That was the
Right.
first thought. Literally a half second later, my next thought was, I procrastinated. I shouldn't have watched Man of Steel last night. I should have just done more work last night so I wouldn't feel so overwhelmed today. So I have these two thoughts literally within a half a second of each other.
So one of those thoughts took responsibility and the other one didn't.
Yes.
So here's what they said, and I'm trying to see if I can shut down stuff on my computer and get this thing to work. Okay. Basically, what they said is, if you're a pessimist, you might say something like, I mess everything up, I can't do this. And so what they say is that pessimists look at challenges as pervasive and um, and persistent. In other words, their problems are everywhere, and they're going to persist. Nothing I do is going to change it, right? Optimists, on the other hand, find that problems are specific and temporary. And so the optimist might say something like, I didn't manage my time well. I allowed myself to get distracted by the show, or that means that the problem is temporary and fixable, so that you can take action and do something about it. But if you're a pessimist, if you assume that everything is persistent and pervasive, then nothing you do really matters, and so you do nothing. And what they found in their research is that optimists experience just about as much hardship as the pessimists. There's not a difference there, but it's how they handle it that matters.
It's interesting hearing you explain it that way, Spencer. From an optimist point of view, if someone falls short, the way you're describing it is you're describing it as kind of a temporary behavioral anomaly, almost like, oh well, yeah, I made a mistake
That I can fix.
that you can fix. That's something that comes with optimism, whereas the pessimist is focusing on character flaws. There are things that are inherently wrong with me.
Or
I
society, or my
procrastinate.
boss, or the government.
Yeah, I procrastinate. I'm a loser. Or yes, people are idiots. Yeah,
Right.
it's that kind of a thing. So that's very, very illuminating. I appreciate you framing it that way for me.
Well, I know we're running out of time, but let's maybe finish on this. But what they found is optimists earn higher grades. They're less likely to drop out of school. Young adults are healthier. They live longer than pessimists. They're more satisfied in their marriage. They're more likely to stay in their job. According to one study by MetLife Insurance, they sell 25% more. This is optimists versus pessimists. Other sales professions like telecommunications, auto, real estate, banking, they found that optimists outsell pessimists by 20 to 40%. All of this research that they found led to what's called behavioral cognitive behavioral therapy, which shows that we can change the story we tell about ourselves and change the outcomes that we're having. Hardships like we've experienced this last year can be a catalyst for positive change. And I have so many more stories that can explain that, but to look at hardship as an opportunity for growth and learning and development is very, very powerful. I have so much more to share, but we're out of time. I know you got to go. Is that right?
Yes, I do. I do. There was there were a couple of things that were left on our list. Maybe we'll save them for next time. But I'm curious, in your very recent experiences here, Spencer, working with clients who are dealing with these kinds of challenges as you are going through and helping them, what kind of impact is the work that you're doing having on them?
So what I'm hearing is people are some of them are saying, thank you for reminding me. Sometimes I need to just be reminded that I have the ability to really control my own destiny. And what is that? What is that? Oh, let me see if I can find that really quickly. There's a great poem by William Ernest Hensley. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And I think what it's doing is it's reminding people that they are the captains of their souls. And I think these are principles that are true that every once in a while we needed to be reminded of and empower ourselves to lift ourselves out, to change our thinking and to solve our current problems and circumstances. And so it gets them thinking really as, what can I do? Who can I talk to? In many cases, it's me. In many cases, it's other people that I refer them to or that they know to help them solve those problems. And they get into solution mode, innovation mode, creativity mode, and they start solving problems.
Well, so you were inspired, I think, to read that poem. My wife and I just watched Invictus. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I
It's
have South
yeah, right,
Africa.
South Africa and the rugby team, and
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela, after 27 years of prison, writes that poem to the captain of the rugby team.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's in the movie, and it was something that, and who knows how historically accurate these things are, right? But it was positioned as Nelson Mandela. That was something that was a poem that he treasured while in prison,
Yeah.
which he then used to help motivate the South African.
Isn't that interesting that he used that poem while he was in prison, while he had no control, but he was in control of his attitude? And we'll pick it up there next time.
All right.
Remind
Sounds
me
like
of
a
that.
plan. Spencer, it's been a great year, and I look forward to many, many more. I appreciate you coming onto the podcast. If people want to learn more about how you can help them, or if they just want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Oh, thank you so much, Christian. It's been so great to be with you. Go to altiumleadership.com, ALTIUM leadership.com, and you can message me there. How about you, Christian? How can they reach you?
Well, people can find me at the websites, gp4.com, oh my gosh, gpfour.com, or you can look me up on LinkedIn, Christian Napier, or my email, cnapier@gp4.com. All right. Well,
Brilliant.
it's been a great year. It's been a challenging year, but it's been super educational and informative, and it's really been nice to collaborate with you on this crazy podcast and learn so much. I really appreciate it. Listeners, please like and subscribe, and we'll catch you again soon. Spencer, thanks.
Thank you.